Let's pray together. And Lord, thank you so much for today. And this morning, Lord, I want to thank you especially for the people that have invested in our lives, especially those that told us their stories about you, that led us to come to know you and to become a part of your family. I want to thank you for those people in particular. As we think about them, I want to pray for them, Lord. I pray for, some of them aren't even with us anymore, but I want to thank you for their legacy that lives on. Help us, Father, to think about our role today and what you would have us to do to be that person for someone else. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Have a seat. So I just got done doing a youth end of summer camp out. I'm kind of tired. Friday night, of the 5 hours of sleep I was allocated, I only think I got 2, so I'm kind of wiped out. But I did get a full night's sleep last night. You guys look tired too. Or you look, I don't know, I'm sorry, but you just kind of look, is it the end of summer? Is that the deal? It's just like, it's kind of winding down and everybody's just like, oh, tired. Well, it's not over yet. We got some great weather headed our direction, so paint your house, clean out your chimney, stack the wood. Come on, we got things to do. Summer isn't officially over until I think September 20th, right? Make sure somebody informs the weatherman about that because sometimes that doesn't always work out. We're doing a 6-week series, and it starts today. Now, today is kind of the unofficial kickoff. You guys are here a week early, so extra bonus points for that. But we're going to be talking about this series on evangelism called Who's Your One? And evangelism is just a big word for telling people about Jesus. And, I don't know about you, but God is building a family, all right? We know that's true. That's kind of been from the very beginning, even when he created Adam and Eve. What did he create? He created a family. He's building a family, and he wants you to be part of his family. That's the whole point of everything that's going on. All the activity of God in the world is all about God working to draw people into his family. And he wants you to be a part of it. He wants your friends and your neighbors and all those people that drive you crazy. He wants everybody to be a part of his family. And we kind of have a role in that. The whole universe really was created in this way. And once you become a part of God's family, he gives you an opportunity to help other people become a part of his family too. That's kind of our role. But if you're like me, and I'm just going to have like an honest moment with you, okay? If you're like me, when people start talking about sharing your faith, like there's all kinds of words, particularly Southern Baptists in particular are really big on evangelism and sharing your faith and winning the world for Jesus. And when I hear those phrases, seriously, there's just a part of me that just kind of dies inside because I'm not really good at it. You know what I mean? And when somebody says, oh, we need to win the world for Jesus, I feel like they just handed me a Dixie cup and said, go drain the Pacific Ocean for me, would you? I mean, it just, have you ever felt that way, or am I the only one? I know not everybody is like this. So I have a really close friend of mine. We've been together since, went to the same school up at Tootle, Jody Caskey. We've been friends for a really long time. We were in Cub Scouts together. We played sports together. Now we do youth ministry together. He's a great guy. And I want to tell you something about Jody if you don't know him. Jody's one of those guys that I'm not. Jody's the kind of guy who could walk up to a perfect stranger, like that's holding a sign outside of Walmart that says, I'm hungry or whatever, hand him a sandwich, introduce himself, hi, I'm Jody, who are you? Shake their hand, and within 2 minutes, the conversation turns to something spiritual. He starts telling them about Jesus. And here's the thing, anybody can do that. But Jody does it in a way that it's not weird. Every time I try to do that, the guy wants to leave town. He's like, these people are weird. I'm not staying here anymore. It's just, do you know what I'm talking about? And so for those of you who were really good at that kind of like just cold turkey, like walk up to somebody and immediately start talking about Jesus, Lord bless you. I'm not that guy. Like it's weird to me. And it's awkward for the person I'm trying to share with. But I tried to be that guy for a really long time, and it didn't work out. Every single, how to win your friends for Jesus Bible study I ever took, every class I ever took, every seminar I ever went to, it all was the same thing. Here are the steps, and I would do the steps. And it was just awkward and painful for everyone involved. And so if that's you, then you and I are on the same page. And I got great news. I've discovered that you don't have to be Jody in order to share your faith. which is good news for everybody else in the universe, because Jody's like one of the only guys I know that's like that. Carrie's a little bit like that too, but she makes me crazy as well. So I want to talk a little bit about this, but I want to start off with a verse that's really important. Now, you feel like if you're like me, you feel like I wasn't made to be that street corner evangelist. Good news. But I'll tell you what, the thing we're going to talk about this week is you were made for it. Is somebody going to do this for me? Or do you want me to do it? Okay, sorry. Hi, Facebook, a little behind the scenes moment. All right, or YouTube or whatever we're doing now. All right, you were made for this. You were made, what I'm going to talk about today, you might not have been made for what Jody does, but you're made for this, okay? Trust me. Now I want to share a verse with you. This is kind of like a key verse. If you've been to church at all, you've probably heard this verse. It's in Matthew chapter 28. It's the end of the book of Matthew, and it's kind of Jesus has died and been buried and rose from the grave, and he's appeared to over 500 people, and then he gives some marching orders, some instructions, and this is what it says, Matthew 28, verses 19 and 20. Go, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey everything I've commanded you, and surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age, especially those professional holy people that get paid to do this sort of thing. No, that's not in there. That wasn't in there. That last part I added. The truth is this is a command for all of us. But like I said before, you might read that and think to yourself, man, the whole world? Seriously? That's a lot. Yeah, I feel the same way. Now, if you're a Christian, if you belong to God's family, you're going to spend eternity with Jesus in heaven, if that's who you are, you have two things that you need to be doing. One is what we call your ministry, and that's the work you do here in the church, right? And you need to have a ministry, whether it's making coffee or taking the offering or teaching Sunday school or whatever it is you do. You need to have a ministry. It's anything that you can do that builds up the body, the people that that work, that go to church here. Anything you can do. Could be all kinds of stuff, cooking, food. I mean, there's just 1,000 things you could do. If you don't have a ministry, you need one because you're not really going to grow unless you have a ministry. You kind of got to have that. You're just going to get stagnant and stale. Okay, but I'm not going to talk about that today. What I want to talk about today is your mission, the thing you were made for. You were made to share your story, share the gospel with people outside of this room. You were made to go to the lost. You were made to take the gospel to the nations and make disciples and baptize, and you were made for that. As a matter of fact, Jesus, when he prayed for you, we have a recorded prayer where he prayed for all of us in John chapter 17. I got to put this down or I'm going to start clicking it. John 17, verse 18, Jesus said, talking to his Father, as you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. So your ministry is to the church, but your mission is to the world. Your ministry is to believers, but your mission is to non-believers or unbelievers or people who are still outside of the family of faith. In Acts chapter 20, verse 24, listen to what Acts teaches us. However, I consider my life worth nothing to me if only I may finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me, the task of testifying to the gospel of God's grace. That's our job. We have a task. We have a task. We have to do something, and it's to share the gospel. Now, someone shared it with you. Think about it for a second. If you're a Christian, if you belong to God's family, you know that someone told you their story. They shared the gospel with you. Think about who it was. Now, maybe for me, it was my grandma. I mean, she was like very passionate about sharing her faith, and she would sing me hymns, sing me to bed, sleep with hymns every night, and tell me her story. She was Pentecostal, so she was really into it. Like, she would just be pounding it. And I became a Christian because of what she told me. My parents, they shared their story with me too, but my grandma was really instrumental. And it's a great story. It's a great truth that's been entrusted to us. Now think about this for a second. If you knew the cure for cancer, you would share it with people, right? I mean, I would hope so. Some of you are just jaded enough to think about, I'd make a lot of money doing that. No. I'm just saying, if you had really great news, if you had really great truth, you would share it with people. Well, you do. And it's better than the cure for cancer because you have information, you have the truth that sets people free, that gives people purpose and hope in their life. And man, if nothing else, this world needs hope. This world needs purpose. And you have it inside of you, whether you realize it or not. You know, the truth that God knows you and he loves you and he wants you. Man, that is, for a lot of people, to have that kind of hope in their life would be a game changer. It would change their life. But having that truth inside of you, having that understanding in your head, knowing the reality about who Jesus is and his plan for our life is both a privilege to have it, but there's also responsibility that goes with it. As a matter of fact, in Romans chapter 14, Paul writes this, and he says, each of us will give an account of himself to God. You have this task that you're supposed to do. You have this gospel that you're supposed to share. And by the way, God's going to ask you, so how'd you do with that? And I didn't put this on the screen, but 1 Peter 5:4, Peter teaches the same thing. He says, when the chief shepherd appears, you'll receive the crown of glory that will never fade away. In other words, you know, God expects you to do something, and you're going to get a reward for doing it. So it's a win-win. But how do you do this? If you're not a Jody, if you're a Danny, and you just door to door, knocking on doors and sharing your faith just doesn't work for you, then how can you do it? Well, I'm about to tell you, there's two things, and that's it. We got two things. You can handle two things, right? So if you have your listening guide, pull it out. And the first thing is this: God expects you to bring others to Jesus. Two things: bring and go, all right? First one is bring. Later on, we'll talk about go. Bring others to Jesus. Can you write that down? It's in your notes. Just write it down. God expects me to bring others to Jesus. Now, I want to ask you a question. Who is going to be in heaven because of you? Now, before you get all theological on me, I get it. No one is going to be in heaven because of any of us, right? Jesus is the one who paid the price, and grace is a gift that he gives. We don't. But you know what I'm asking. Who, when you get to heaven, is going to walk up to you and say, you told me about God's grace? And because God worked through your life and through your words, I'm a part of his family. Who is going to be in heaven because of you? Think about it. Well, I take a drink of my coffee because my throat hurts. Is anyone? 2 Timothy chapter 4, Paul writes to his young friend Timothy, and in verse 5 he says, Timothy, work at bringing others to Christ. This is the job, right? It's work. Well, we work hardest at the things we care the most about. Right? I mean, it's really true. You think about, there's lots of things you do because someone pays you to do it. Or because, if you don't take care of your children, then someone's going to look down on you about it. Or if there's things you do because you have to. But you work most passionately and most fervently at the things you really care about. One of the things I love about our congregations, there are people who work in our church, not as employees, but, just as ministers, like people like you, that do things and they don't get anything for it. I mean, they don't half the time they don't even get a pat on the back, except for today. Sue and Rick Joyce, we have the nicest churchyard of any church in town. And that is due almost entirely to the efforts and organization of lots of people, but particularly Rick and Sue, not Joyce, Hill. Thinking about Rick and Sue Joyce because they're back from England. But anyway, Rick and Sue Hill. So if you get a chance to see them, they were at the 9:30 service. Do me a favor, two things. One, tell them to get into a small group and quit going to the 9:30 service because they need to be in a small group, as does everyone else who goes to the 9:30 service, but I'm already banging the drum on that with them. And also, secondly, is this. Make sure that you tell them thank you and take them to lunch, right? I mean, they didn't ask me to do that. They didn't put me up to it, but, you ought to thank them, pat them on the back, and take them to lunch. Come to think of it, you ought to pat me on the back and take me to lunch too, but not today. I'm going to go home and take a nap. But anyway, that was a little self-serving. Bring people to Jesus. Work at bringing people to Christ. Now, I love that Paul says, don't bring them to the church. He's not asking Timothy, bring them to a church, or bring them to a doctrine, or a religion, or a philosophy, or a denomination. He's not saying that. He's saying, bring them to Jesus. And the great thing about that is, in order to bring people to Jesus, all you need to know is Jesus. That's it. You don't have to be like a biblical scholar. You can just, Christianity is really not a religion. It's a relationship anyway. So introduce your friends, the people in your life, introduce them to Jesus. There's lots of ways you can do it. You can bring them to church because, Jesus shows up here. But there's lots of ways you can do that. So the question is, okay, who? All right? If our first assignment is God expects me to bring others to Jesus, who does he expect me to bring? The answer is simple. Everybody you know. Oh boy, okay, here we go again. Give me my Dixie cup, right? I'm going to go try and drain. But it's true. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus is kind of telling a story, and it's a bit of a parable. He says, go out quickly into the streets and the alleys of the town and bring the poor, crippled, and blind and the lame. A little bit later, he says, go out to the roads and country lanes and make them come in so that my house will be full. God wants to use us to bring others to him, and he wants us to bring everybody, because everybody is searching for peace and purpose and hope in their lives. Did you know that Barna did a research study not too long ago and discovered that in the United States there are 69 million people today, 69 million people who don't go to church anywhere. So today, 69 million people will not go to church. Now you might think, well, that's okay. I can believe that. That's a lot, guys. That's a lot. But anyway, okay, I can believe that. But here's the statistic that might just really blow your mind. Same study, they asked the question, okay, so what if someone you knew, okay, not a stranger, right? What if someone you knew invited you to go to church with them? Would you go? Over half said they would. Over half of the people, of those 69 million people, would go to church if just one person that they knew invited them to come with them. I mean, those are good odds, guys. Ask two people, one of them's going to say yes, the other one's going to go fishing. Sorry, Mike, nothing against fishing, right? Just not on Sunday, right? Everybody you know. Everybody you know. People are looking. People want that. They're spiritually hungry. You know the best-selling books. You look on Amazon and you look for like the top-selling books year after year after year. They all have to do with spiritual things. They're not all Christian-based. Don't get me wrong, okay? But you compile a list of all of the best-selling books year after year after year, and they're all, they all have to do with spiritual things: life, death, God, eternity, hope for the future. These are the books that people are interested in. There was an interesting study, another Barna study that I read not that long ago. They pulled a whole bunch of students, and they figured out that students, like teenagers, are more interested in talking about God and eternity and life after death, those kinds of topics, than they're interested in talking about sex or drugs or alcohol or music. I mean, people want to engage in this. They want to talk about it. People are searching for hope and purpose in their life. So that's who, right? There's 69 million of them out there. Go get them. Okay, maybe not right now. Let me finish. Well, no, that'd be okay. If you all decided to leave right now, I'd feel pretty good about that. As long as you didn't just go, to Applebee's or something. When? Well, the short answer for when we go is right now. We're going to bring people to Jesus right now. Now is the time. And I'll show you how now I mean. There was a guy named Andrew who was one of Jesus' disciples. And in John chapter 1, when Jesus is starting to call his guys to be his disciples, he calls Andrew, says, I want you to follow me. And listen to what it says. John chapter 1, verse 40. Now, Andrew has not spent hardly any time with Jesus at all. He's certainly not been his disciple for more than a minute, right? The first thing Andrew did was go find his brother Simon and tell him, we have found the Messiah. And he brought him to Jesus. The first thing he did. He didn't go out and get a seminary degree. He didn't go out and take a class. He didn't, memorize a bunch of Bible verses. I love what Ted Cotton, he's with the Lord now, but he's a friend of mine, old preacher guy. He told me, he goes, Danny, you could tell your story and not even know a single Bible verse. It's true. It's true. You could. Don't get me wrong. It helps to know Bible verses, but man, what did Andrew do? First thing, right now, before I do anything else, I'm going to go get Peter. So how do you do it? Now, this is the catch. This is the part that really trips people up. Because if you look online, there's like all these different like courses and methods and like do this and do that. It's like a Rubik's Cube trying to figure out, what's the best method for me? Well, guess what? The best method for Danny when it comes to sharing his faith is going to be different than the best method for you. But let me give you one thing that I think will help you. You ready? Find something that you have in common with a person that you know needs Jesus. They don't go to church. That's a pretty good indicator, okay? One of those 69 million people. Find something you have in common with them. Something that you have in common with them, and then go do it with them. What do you like to do? What do you like to do? Now, don't say Bible study and prayer meeting, okay? Because first of all, it's probably not true. Second of all, that's not what I'm talking about. What do you really like to do? Right? What do you like to do? Shane, what do you like to do? You like to camp. You ever been camping before? Yeah? Any lost people out there camping? On a Sunday when they should be in church? Yeah. Okay, good. That's probably one you could do then, right? Good. That's a good one. That's a good start. Let's see. Somebody else. Andrew, what do you like to do? Golf. Yeah, you ever hear any lost guys out on the golf course? Yeah. Yep. In the sand trap, usually they're revealing their love for Jesus, right? Golf is great. Golf is so awesome because especially, because it's like 6 hours of utter frustration. You just hang out and hit the ball and yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. John, what do you like to do?
Go fishing.
Do you really? Nice. Yeah. So, and we know there's lost guys fishing, right? There's people that need Jesus that fish. I had one lady told me she liked to shop, right? I'm going to tell you a story about my friends Mike and Devin. Mike and Devin Christensen, some of you know who they are. They grew up in this church. I love this couple because I have this long history with them. I met both of them about their ninth grade. Well, Mike his ninth grade year, and Devin her 10th grade year. She moved up from Ridgefield. Anyway, and Mike became a Christian because Rob Nolan was a teacher at the high school. He was a freshman English teacher at the high school, and he started a Young Life Club, which is basically just an opportunity to get a whole bunch of teenagers that don't go to church, okay, exactly what we're talking about, together, and you hang out, you do crazy, weird things with them, fun stuff, annoying stuff, messy stuff, just whatever. You do all this wild kind of fun stuff with them, and you just build relationships with them. And so Mike and Devin started coming to Rob's Young Life Club, and they went to camp, and they got saved. And what was really kind of cool is that fall, after they got saved, they were here for like a youth event, and Mike asked Devin to go to homecoming with him. Oh, it was great, except for he did it on my dime. Like he grabbed the microphone from me when I was trying to be all spiritual. Devin, will you go to homecoming with me? But here we are, right? All these years later, they got 3 kids. They're married, they're a great couple, they're working, in our church, and they're ministering to people, and they pretty much owe it all to me. So I think it's a great story, but here's the best part of it. Guess what Mike does for a living? He's a 9th grade English teacher at the high school. And guess what they're doing? They're doing Young Life. They're like investing in these kids, and they're like meeting these kids. Like, what do they got in common with these kids? Well, school, right? Sports. Mike's like a football coach. I was asking Devin, what do you like to do? She goes, I like to shop. And it reminded me of another story. We had a Young Life leader, and she was trying to figure out how she could spend time with these girls she was meeting at club. She would just show up and just hang out. She actually didn't do anything, just showed up, laughed at us that were doing weird stuff, and just kind of hung out. But she was looking for a way to connect with these girls, and these were some screwed up girls. I'm going to tell you what. They had, really, honestly, deep depression, eating disorders. A lot of them were cutting, like the kids tend to do with razor blades, so doing self-harm, some really big, deep wounds, hard hearts. It was just tough. And so this one of the girls, she comes up to me and she says, the leader, she says, I want to spend time with these girls, but I don't have anything in common with them. And she says, I got these 2 little kids I'm trying to raise. My husband works full-time. I just don't have a lot of time. I said, well, what are you doing tomorrow after school? And she goes, I'm going to pick up my kids and we're going to go to Walmart. And I said, call one of them, see if they want to go with you. She's like, to Walmart? Yeah. So she did. So she called this girl. And this girl goes, yeah, I'll go. And the girl called one of her friends because, why not? And so now this lady's taking these 2 teenage girls and her 2 kids, and they're going to Walmart, and they're grocery shopping. And she takes them grocery shopping, and then she brings them home, and one of the girls plays with the little kids while the other teenage girl helps her put her groceries in the cupboards. And the whole time, she's just talking to them. And then, as time goes by, she gets a chance to, share her story. This is what I do. This is what, I became a Christian because Rob was doing Young Life and blah, 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 blah. I'm just telling you, it's that easy. Whatever it is you like to do, start doing it with lost people. I had another friend of mine who was really into poker, big time. And I told him, I said, well, you're a Baptist, you can't play poker. That's a lie. Okay, I'm just being funny there. Although my grandma would say, But anyway, and so he was really into poker, but all of his poker buddies were his Christian friends. Well, and they would just play. They wouldn't play for money. It wasn't gambling. They were just playing for fun, right? Well, anyway, he decided that is it. From now on, whenever we have a poker night, because he had this faithful group of about 6 guys that would come play poker with him, he said, from now on, if you're going to come, you have to bring somebody with you that doesn't go to church. One of those 69 million people in the United States that doesn't go to church, bring them with you. If you don't show up with a buddy, you don't get to play. And they did. And they saw people come to know Jesus because they played poker with them. Can you believe that? I'm going to have a long talk with my grandma when I get to heaven and just tell her straight up, Jesus used cards. No, he didn't. Paul writes about this in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 22. Here's what he says. To the weak, I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all men so that by all possible means I might save some. Do what you love to do. Go places you love to go. Just make sure you don't surround yourself with a bubble of Christian folks. Invite some of those people that need to meet Jesus to go with you. Now let me give you one today. I'm going to give you something to do today. You ready for this? You thought, I got today all figured out. Me too. I'm going to take a nap. But here's what's happening today, and I want you to be there. If I don't see you there, I'm going to be like, I know it's late notice, but you can do this. Today at the park down here, they're having a musical concert. 2 hours, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Show up whenever you want. I can't vouch for the music, okay, because it's not a Christian thing. This is not going to see, ZZ Top, or no, maybe it is like ZZ Top. DC Talk, that's what I meant to say. Look at it, John. Anyway, wow. Told you it gets worse. The third service is the worst for me. Anyway, go to listen to the music. Look, there's these 2 girls, Riley and Jess, and they have brain tumors, and their families are going through a really hard time. And so some people, not church folks, set up this benefit concert. You can show up. They're going to have a bucket there. You can throw a couple of bucks in or not. No one's going to check you at the door. Show up and hang out. Bring a lawn chair. It's right where we had the bluegrass and barbecue and the open mic, just right down there. Go to it. 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Show up for an hour or half an hour. Show up long enough to just shake hands with somebody and, that's it. That's it. Don't say anything about Jesus unless you just absolutely have to. Just be there. Meet somebody. I had a lady in the early service that loves gardening. She's like, I'm totally into gardening. Did you know that the grade school has a gardening thing, like a garden down there? Did you guys know that? I didn't know that. They have a garden. And so anybody from the community that can pass a background check can come down and help the kids learn how to garden. Just show up. You love to do it. Do it with some people that need to know Jesus. And if you make friends with one of them or 2 of them or 10 of them and you start hanging out on a regular basis, at some point, they might ask you, what are you doing on Sunday? Oh, I'm going to church. Here's the best part, right? Getting people to go to church, there are 2 times a year when it's really easy to get somebody to come to church. Do you know what they are? Christmas and Easter. Yeah, you guys got it. And so here we are. We're going into September, right? So you've got just enough time to start building a relationship with somebody that doesn't know Jesus but needs to know him. And it won't be weird because you'll be hanging out with them like, 2 or 3, 4, 5 times between now and November, Thanksgiving-ish, right? And you can say, hey, by the way, you know what? We have this really great Christmas Eve service. You ought to come to it Christmas time. It is really great, by the way. I mean, it's fun. You never know what's going to happen. It's a candlelight service. One year, this girl lit her hair on fire. It was super exciting. Okay, that's really a true story. Anyway, I wouldn't recommend that. Elias did that actually one year too, but sorry, buddy, didn't mean to tell you your story. Anyway, but the point is this, it's not hard if you know him. And remember, over half of those 69 million said they'd come to church with you if you would just get to know them and ask them. Find something that you have in common. Be all things to all men so that by all possible means you might save some. Okay, let's wrap this up with the second one. God expects me to go wherever I can. God expects me to bring and go. Bring and go. Go wherever I can. Write it down. Please and thank you. Right, Adam? Okay, Mark 16:15, there's a verse that says, go into the world and preach the good news to all creation. So go is a big word for believers. Like if you're a Christian, if you're part of God's family, go is a big word. It's an important word. Going into the world can seem overwhelming, but it's like how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. If you break it up into chunks, it's not so bad. Remember in John 13:15, Jesus said, I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Jesus goad to earth, right? And you should goad somewhere too, right? You should go somewhere. It was great. Saturday morning, I got a message from Grace Teal, and she had made it to Africa. Like, she's in Kenya, right? And that's pretty exciting, right? I mean, Africa. And if you know Grace, like Africa is this is a big deal. Like she's just this sweet, quiet girl, not a big risk taker, right? To put it mildly. And she's in Africa with her grandma, who is a big risk taker, by the way, from what I gather. She's a kind of a very big personality. But anyway, here's the thing. So she's there. So I'm thinking, hey, I look at my clock. She's on my world clock. And like right now, it's probably 9 o'clock there. So they're a few hours ahead of us. And I'm thinking, it's early in the morning, and she's up. And so I message her and say, hey, let's talk. And she's like, okay. I'm talking on my phone, sitting around a campfire with a bunch of teenagers, and I'm talking to one of my youth who's in Africa. That's pretty cool, right? I'm so proud of her. That's a big deal. But I can't go to Africa. Like I am, at least for right now, without some kind of miraculous intervention from God, I'm kind of disqualified from going to Africa. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like they won't let me leave the United States or whatever. I don't have a criminal record. It's not like that. But the point, I have a mortgage. It's worse. I have a mortgage. I have to pay a mortgage. I have kids that are in school. I have these other things that I have to do. I can't go to Africa. Now, I can send, and we're going to talk about that another time. You might not be able to be a goer, but you can be a sender. But I'm going to tell you, Grace can go, and she's there, and it's like, so pray for her. But we're all called to go somewhere, just not all to Africa. Go to the people that you care about. Go to the people that you care about because they're hurting. Go to them. Go to them. In Acts chapter 1, Jesus kind of wraps up everything. And this verse is part of those like closing instructions. Acts 1:8, he says, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. That means the minute that you receive Jesus and you become part of his family, you will receive power at that moment. And he says, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Now, I love the way he words this. Like, he doesn't say, and it would be great if you would decide to maybe be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea and Samaria, and to the end of the world. He doesn't say it like that, does he? Like when I want Elias to do something, like Elias, sit down. You're going to sit down right there. Thank you, buddy. See how I did that? It works almost all the time. When I want Elias to do something, I don't go and say, hey, Elias, could you do Daddy a teensy-weensy favor? If you don't mind, would you go in and clean your room? That doesn't work. I have to tell him, you will go in and you will clean your room because this is what you're going to do. And that's the way that Jesus words these instructions to us. You will be my witnesses. It's not a please and, it's just a go. This is what you do. This is who you are. And he names 3 different places there. I know it looks like 4, but it really is 3. Let me explain that to you. If you didn't live, I'm assuming, some of you look like you're up there in age, but probably weren't alive when this was written, okay? If you're not familiar with the geography of first century Palestine, you might not understand where he's going with this. Jerusalem is the people that are closest to you, okay? So when Jesus gave these instructions, they understood Jerusalem meant the people that were closest to them. It's your family. It's your closest friends. It's the people that you work with 40 hours away. It's those people that, you have a lot in common with. You know them well. That's Jerusalem. You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, those people that are closest to you. Now, Judea and Samaria, geographically, were close to Jerusalem, but the reason he mentions them is because people who lived in Jerusalem weren't like the people who lived in Judea or Samaria. They were very different. These are the people that you're geographically close to, but they're not like you, right? It was funny, in the earliest service, I sometimes say things that are just not smart, and then I repeat them in the third service. I don't know why I do that. But anyway, so my friend Coy was sitting there, and I said, it's those people, with all the tattoos and the piercings. Because in a typical Baptist, Coy gets up and looks at me, and I'm like you, Coy. Anyway, but you know what I'm talking about. It's people who aren't like you. Or if you have tattoos and piercings, it's those people who have none, right? Those really, that wear weird normal clothes or whatever. I mean, it's those people. It's the people that aren't like you, that think differently than you do, that talk differently than you do, that look differently than you do, that believe things differently than you do. Here you go. You ready for it? That vote differently than you do. You will be my witnesses. Yeah, that one always gets a big what? You will be my witnesses to those people. They're all around you. You know they are. You see their bumper stickers and the signs in their yards. You hear what they're saying in the grocery store or at the ball field. You know who they are. There are people that are close to you, but they're not like you. And he says, you'll be my witnesses to them too. And then he says, and then, of course, to the rest of the world. So I really feel like what Jesus is saying here is he's saying, start with the people closest to you. Be my witnesses to them. I love that he calls us to be his witness too. Isn't that great? Being a witness, he doesn't say, be my defense attorney. Jesus does not need you to be his defense attorney, okay? So all those amazing things that you learned in your apologetics class, that's great. I'm glad you know all that stuff. Please don't use that when you're witnessing, okay? Please don't start pulling out charts and graphs. Just tell your story, okay? I mean, eventually, it's good to know that stuff. It's good to know, why we believe what we believe. And if you can answer some questions that they ask, that's great, but don't argue with people. Don't be his defense attorney, be his witness. Share what you know. Tell the story. By the way, you're the world's leading expert on your story. Did you know that? No one knows your story better than you. No theologian, no pastor, no biblical scholar knows your story as well as you know your story. And here's the best part. You don't even have to know why it works. I got home from the youth camp out thing and I had a screaming headache. I took 2 Advil, popped them in my mouth, swallowed them in my stomach. I have no idea how that works, but my headache goes away. I mean, it would make more sense to me if I'd rub them on my head, but that's not what you do. You put them in your mouth, it goes in your stomach, and I know, like, Dr. Max over here, like, well, what happens is it goes to the bloodstream and it shrinks the capillaries and blah, blah, whatever, shut up. Anyway, the point is, I know you're thinking that. The point is this, you don't have to know how it works. My marriage was falling apart, and then somebody invited me to go to church and introduced me to Jesus, and I gave my life to Jesus, and you know what? My wife gave her life to Jesus, and our marriage is doing better. My kids were driving me nuts, and I was ready to, see their picture on the back of a milk carton, and I gave my heart to Jesus, and I was, all of my friends, or all this was going on, that was going on. I had no hope. I had no hope at all. I mean, I don't know how it works. I don't know. I just know that I once was lost, and now I'm found. I once was blind, but now I see. That's what I know. And you can tell that story, can't you? Talking to a girl on a piece of metal and plastic, and she's clear on the other side of the planet. You think I know how that works? But I know it does work. You should try it sometime. She's on Facebook. It's awesome. Your job is to love people and tell your story. That's it. You say, well, I could do that, but I don't know if they would come to Jesus. That's not your job. That's the Holy Spirit's job. He's going to be held accountable for that. Your job is to love people and tell your story. Can you love people? Can you love people? Can you tell your story? My work is done here. That's awesome, you guys. 3 things I want you to commit to doing. 3 things today. And a commitment is different than wishful thinking when we write it down. Remember that, okay? A commitment is different than wishful thinking when we write it down. If you're just thinking you'd like to save money, or you're thinking you'd like to lose weight, or you're thinking you'd like to fix that relationship or whatever, that's wishful thinking until you write it down. I will do this. I will do that. 3 things. And I made it super easy for you. You don't even have to really write them down. They're already written down for you. And they're ABC, so they're easy to remember. Okay? They're written on the back of this blue card. So pull it out. It should be right in front of you. Take a quick look at it with me. The front, I guess, of this blue card. The first one is this. A, I will attend church each Sunday in September. Now, listen to me. I'm not going to blow smoke. This September is one of those weird months that has 5 Sundays in it. Yeah. So this is a big ask, and I get it, okay? And you're here this week, which means that would be 6 in a row. For some of you, that's going to be like a personal best, all right? And we'll all be so proud. But I'd like you to commit to doing that. I'm going to be here. Now, I know some of you are like, well, I had this thing planned. I was going to do this. I was going to do that. Right? I heard things, Can't I skip one? Please don't. We're so fond of counting the cost. The Bible even tells us, count the cost, right? Count the cost. There's a cost to be counted. But what we always count is the cost of what it would cost us to obey God. We always count that. Oh, well, I might have to give up, there's a football game, and blah, 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 blah. We count the cost of obedience. What we never do is count the cost of disobedience. There's a far greater cost to disobeying than there is obeying. So, number 1, attend. Attend every church service in September. Well, not every service. 1 service a Sunday. Every Sunday, okay? If you show up for all 3, I'm going to think something's wrong with you. Terry's here for all 3. We know something's wrong with him. All right, number 2, B, bring. I'm going to bring someone to church sometime before the end of the year. Now, I'm cutting you a lot of slack on that. Before the end of the year, you can do it. Christmas counts, okay? New Year's Eve counts. We're going to have a youth New Year's Eve thing here. Bring them, I don't care. We'll have fun. But I want you to do that. So that means build some relationships now. And number 3, and this is kind of a little more vague, but I want you to feel my heart behind it. I'll commit to fulfilling the mission I was made for by being a witness. Basically, all I'm saying is you're going to begin to formulate a plan where you're going to do something you already love to do with people that don't know Jesus, with the hopes that at some point it will seem right for you to share your story with them. How hard is that? So, if you're courageous and would like me to pray for you as you make these commitments, then I'd like you to check those 3 boxes, put your name on this card, Write any other prayer requests on the back. Maybe you know the name of somebody that you're going to be like, this is the person, this is my one that I'm going to be praying for. I'm going to be hoping to connect with. Write their name down. I'd be glad to pray for them too.